last couple of years, we've kind of taken a stab at predicting the best weapons you'll find post Warzone integration, but before the integration even happens. I'd say of the last 2 years, we're probably like 17 for 20 or something like that of the weapons we talk about. But yes, there were a few outliers that didn't perform as I thought they would, but for the most part, a lot of the weaponry has held up pretty well. So today, I want to take a bit of time to talk about 10 weapons that you should be ranking up for Warzone and ahead of the integration here coming this next week, that in their own space in Black Ops 6 is ultimately beneficial to have these ranked up, but for Warzone, you want to make sure you have these ready to go for day one. So drop your thoughts as we go along. What do you think is a weapon that could prove a dangerous post-integration here? Let me know what your picks would be, and make sure to subscribe for more Black Ops 6 content. We're just getting started, and with Season 1 here upcoming, there's a lot more to come. We're just about 5,000 subscribers off that big 600,000 subscriber mark, so if you're a part of that nearly 75% of viewers not subscribed, I'd love to have you join us on that road to that number. But anyways, for now, let's get into the preview of the weapons that you should be considering ranking up in the final days here ahead of the Warzone integration. So firstly, let's start out with rifles. We're going to be breaking down this video into like categorical mentions of each weapons, not necessarily long range and short range. We're going to be bouncing back and forth here, but the rifles, in the past, we haven't seen as many rifles be the standout as we saw the first couple of years within Warzone. So for this, there's a pair of weapons that I think are absolutely worth ranking up right now. As we'll talk about a little later in the video, there are a few honorable mentions, but the ones that I would focus on firstly are the Model L. As odd as it sounds, because in the MP conversations, I don't feel like the Model L is the most flashy of weapons, but this one is the most well-rounded of rifles for things like Warzone. Multiplayer, it's not too flashy because we have smaller scale maps, but this thing can thrive given the chance in a larger scale combat. With the second highest headshot damage and second highest body damage, one of the best parts about this weapon beyond that is the effective range, currently listed as 44.4 meters, which again would be the second highest of effective ranges. But here's the thing, while we've already talked about second, each of those categories that it's consistently second in, the first one above it ranks well below the Model L in comparable attributes that you want to look for building a weapon for a Warzone experience. So while it's not the highest ranking of any of these categories of stats, it's also the consistently highest rated among all of them put together, which makes it so incredibly enticing. With a controllable rate of fire, decent recoil control at its base, and then you can kit it out further, and a bullet velocity you can end up maxing out pretty well, it's definitely one that I would highly recommend ranking up. The AK-74 also has a spot here in this list, I think, where it's the third highest damage of the rifle category, but the highest of the automatic weapons tied with the Model L. While both, I'd say, back and forth are a little bit more preferential based, the only thing that the AK really has a bit more in terms of base properties that's above the Model L is the fire rate ever so slightly, and then the vertical recoil control. So if you feel like one performs better than the other for you, it's definitely an option, but those are the two rifles that I'd say are absolutely worth ranking up right now. And I think will probably be the medium range weapons that are pretty easy to gravitate towards. There are going to be other ones that outclass it in terms of sheer potential TTK and stuff like that, which we'll touch on in a second. But in terms of pick up and use, I think those might be your best bets here going into week one of Warzone. For the SMGs, talking a lot of close quarter stuff because the medium range and long range are going to be things that we can break down into the next couple of categories of weapons. The SMGs are obviously going to be where you end up seeing a lot of these close quarters engagements. The Tonto 22 is the one that I would highly recommend ranking up the most as of right now. This thing, I already actually got to play with this at COD Next on Area 99, and seeing, while it was outdated per se in regards to the weapon balancing perhaps, not really a whole ton has changed with the Tonto from beta to launch. Maybe some slight adjustments, but this thing absolutely shredded at COD Next. With the highest damage of the SMGs by far, it also has a few things that make it a bit of a high risk, high reward weapon. The damage drop off past effective range is only 6.3 meters, so it's lethal up close, but admittedly it's still very solid outwards of nearly 30 meters. So it's also a progressive drop off, you have to remember, so it's not like it's going to be dropping off a steep cliff in effective use, but it will be something that absolutely up close, you're going to decimate your enemies, but still be able to get a really quick kill off with this, even in mid-range for it. As well, the rate of fire being the lowest of the SMG category for me reminds me a lot of the original Milano meta from Black Ops Cold War's Year of Support in Verdansk. I'd be curious to see if we can replicate that meta by putting on a 2 to 4 times optic and using it as a mid-range weapon, either pairing it maybe with a sniper or a marksman rifle, but we'll definitely see as we go along. But absolutely highly recommend ranking this one up here for the original launch of Warzone and the integration to follow. The C9, unlike other MP5 variations of the past, the C9 actually has some very decent damage and all relatively evenly distributed. The headshot damage really isn't that much different than the leg damage, which historically is the biggest differential in terms of what you end up seeing for those damage properties. 31 damage to the head per shot and 29 elsewhere on the body. So it's pretty forgiving, and if you've played with it in MP, you know that it's a very mobile, very fluid, and very fast weapon build that you can set up with this. So what's weird about this, again, especially comparable to prior MP5 builds of the past, you'll see that the effective range for this is 13.3 meters as opposed to weapons like the Tonto, where, as we just mentioned, that effective range starts to decrease at the 6.3 meter mark. So comparatively, it's a top 3 effective range weapon for SMGs. You'll have controllable fire rate, a great mobility, and a top 3 effective range and damage profile that doesn't really have nearly any difference from headshots to body shots. The Jackal's another one that's up there based purely off of uniform damage distribution. It's great for the upper chest and lower portions of the body, and it's tied for the second best headshots, making it a solid and balanced weapon mixed with its fire rates and controllable recoil as well as the handling properties. So the Jackal, while it was something that absolutely thrives in MP, you might have this already ranked up, but if you haven't already, give it a try. And then finally, in the SMG category, the KSV is one that I would say is making this list here. I don't know that it'd be my main focus here of SMGs. Like if you have time to only rank up a 5 of these 10, I don't know that the KSV would end up making this list, but with lower damage properties by comparison, it still has the second highest rate of fire, meaning in close, it can absolutely shred through plates and enemies. So it will be a great one up close and personal. Now, moving out of the close quarters encounters, let's talk a little bit about medium and long range as a whole. Even moving outwards to some snipers, which I don't really touch too much snipers in Warzone anymore, but it's definitely worth noting. The LMGs, though, there's one in particular, the XMG, where historically we've seen a growing, I don't want to say reliance on, but a more consistent use of LMGs popping up in the best weapons listing for Warzone. I mean, last year alone, we saw that throughout the year we had the Eradicator, Evolvery, DG58, Pulamyot 762, and Bruin all be meta LMGs for spurts of time. Then before that, in Modern Warfare 2, we had the RPK, Socken, Rap-H, and the RAL. So it's no surprise if we do get another one. And my guess is going to be the XMG here at this, because to me, it's the most balanced of the LMGs. Comparatively, it's a bit slower firing, a bit slower for mobility and reload, but depending on what map you're playing, you may not necessarily need that at all. You end up having a ton of ammo at base. The reload speed, if you're playing big map especially, isn't going to be something that is going to be too detrimental, because if somebody starts to push you, you can swap to either your secondary of a pistol, or if you grab a second loadout of another SMG or something like that paired with it. So you can be running across the big map as well with your knife out for tac sprint, so you're not going to lose too much on mobility there from point A to point B in long engagements, but you do get the highest of the LMG damage properties and bullet velocity. So to me, while you can take the PU-21 and kit it out with a smaller mag for faster reloads and a bit more mobility, I kind of like the prospect of the XMG more. So that's one that I'd highly recommend ranking up. Then the marksman rifles, I think, could be a potential problem in some scenarios. The last couple of years, we had battle rifles introduced with Modern Warfare 2 and Modern Warfare 3, and those offered up a lot of weapons that were very easy to control, very easy to use, but also packed a ton of punch. Black Ops 6 does not have a battle rifle category this year, but the marksmans could be equally as dangerous. The Sarkov 762 is one that I would highly recommend ranking up, even though in MP, it might not necessarily seem like the best option here when playing Black Ops 6 multiplayer. This could be a sleeper weapon. I don't know if it will replicate the same most recent semi-auto meta of the Interceptor from Modern Warfare 3, but with a 105 damage to the head and 75 elsewhere within its effective range of 35.6 meters, that's worth having around just in case. Not to mention, we do have a headshot barrel that increases that headshot multiplier in damage this year, that for those that are accurate, it can bring the headshot damage distribution to 125 per shot, meaning that it can two-hit kill. Whether or not that'll be viable, I'm not entirely sure, because to achieve that, you have to sacrifice any other adjustments in either damage range or bullet velocity, or both with other barrels, but hey, the kill potential is there. 20 rounds at base, you can kit it out to be pretty snappy with the ADS, or go heavy on recoil control, and surprisingly, at base the most mobile properties of the marksman rifles, it's a very nice option, I think, to have. So rank that one up, and then the marksman rifle that I would say beyond that is the AEK 973. A burst meta is something we usually see few and far in between with Warzone in the last couple of years, but when it comes to the AEK, it's been absolutely dominant in multiplayer. So I think it has the potential to transfer over to Warzone as well. It's better than the SWAT at base, but a burst comparative to the semi-auto in the Sarkov and DM10 technically falls short on damage per round, but you also have to remember you're shooting 3-round bursts at the time that it takes to shoot 1 round for those semi-autos. So it does equal out to a deadly combo if you can be accurate. So mix that in with the decent effective range for mid-range play at 34.5 meters and the other handling properties, it's not a bad option to have, again, in your back pocket just in case it does become something you want to end up using in Warzone. And the final weapon we'll talk about here today comes down to the sniper, the very long range of the LR762. Now, strangely, all of the sniper rifles actually have very uniform damage properties in a lot of different cases. So what I mean by that is that while you'll see variance in the sort of stomach and arms and limbs, the damage properties of each of those, all 3 of the Frostline, SPD, and LR762 end up having a 306 headshot damage and a 204 neck and upper chest damage. So you get a lot of uniform lethality out of these weapons, so why favor one over the other? To me, I kind of like the LR762 for the prospect of sniping long range within Black Ops 6 and the Warzone integration, just because of that faster bullet velocity at base. You can end up getting it out upwards of 1,163.8 meters per second with a balanced attachment set, or if you just want to fully kit it out for bullet velocity, you can get upwards of 1,322 meters per second, and that is insanely fast for your bullet travel time. So while some of the other properties in terms of handling and rate of fire may be a bit slower, it's one of those things that it depends on really, I think, how you want to use this. Like, it's not going to be a snappy Car 98K from the original Warzone experience, but it is going to be something that is going to pack a punch, kind of reminding me of the snipers we saw within Black Ops Cold War. The ZRG 20mm is what ends up coming to my mind initially, but that might just be like a quick little offhand reference. But an additional note, the AMR Mod 4, which is the Barrett 50 cal, is coming within Season 1. That's probably going to be wicked powerful as well, giving even more one-shot kill lethality with it. So I'd consider that one in the future, but again, going into the actual update here itself, well, obviously you can't progress that right now. So keep that one in your back pocket as well. But that's the weapons that I would recommend ranking up right now ahead of this integration later this week in the Season 1 update. But a couple of wild cards that if you end up having these and you're looking to rank up a few more, I'd say the Compact 92 has a chance where it's super fast firing, might rip through enemies in close, kind of like power in numbers with the rounds fired off, just shredding through enemies. The Goblin Mark II is a super high-powered rifle, the highest damage of the rifle category, but at the trade-off of being semi-automatic. So it's almost like you take a more mobile and rifle-centric marksman rifle at that point. So maybe keep that one in your back pocket. And the DM10 is the final weapon that I'd say is kind of like a wild card, where, as we talked about, the Sarkov is very good, but the DM10 is also up there. It's got a bit quicker rate of fire compared to the Sarkov, but not nearly as much damage. So you're going to end up having to hit 1 or 2 more shots. But beyond that, it might be something that just fits your playstyle a little better. So that said, will this list come true? Maybe, maybe not, but wanted to take a look at the weapons we have on offer right now and give you a heads up on what I think is going to end up being pretty solid here for you in Warzone. So make sure you take some time to rank up these weapons ahead of launch, and let me know if there's anything that you would like to rank up that you don't see on this list. Whatever the case, though, that's where we're going to wrap it up. Let me know your thoughts down below. Drop a like if you guys enjoyed the video, and make sure to subscribe for more Black Ops 6 coverage. Season 1 is upcoming. More information and details definitely going to be released here within the next coming days. So stick it here for all the information and coverage on that, plus everything beyond. I'd love to have you in the community, but for now, thanks so much for watching. My name's been Espresso. I'll see you later. Take care, and peace.